Bonjour, je vais vous donner quelques nouvelles de l'église d'Oguru. En janvier, nous étions en famille à Oguru. Il y avait aussi une famille, la famille Brendle, Nathan et Kelsey, qui étaient avec nous, qui ont passé 6 semaines à Oguru. Ils se préparent à être missionnaires dans une tribu reculée de Papouasie-Nouvelle-Guinée. Ils sont en Papouasie-Nouvelle-Guinée depuis quelques mois. Et pour vous donner des nouvelles de l'église Iskis, eh bien, je me suis dit, je vais leur laisser la parole. Ils vont avoir un regard neuf. Et donc, je vais les laisser vous raconter un petit peu leur expérience de comment ça s'est passé pour eux à Oguru.
I definitely, like, almost as soon as we hit the ground, people were coming to our house giving us food from their gardens, which was an hour hike away. So it was just really sweet and really generous. And that was a huge thing that stood out to us was their generosity.
Like, we were always welcomed. They were always hospitable to us. Not just to us as adults, but hospitable to our kids too. It was a really, like, from the day one, that's who they were.
Very welcoming, yeah.
For me, I spent almost every night out storying with the Bible teachers, which it really just means we just sat down and talked
Around a fire.
around the fire, just in their houses until late at night. And like, that was my favorite time, was just talking with them. But there was one night in particular where I went around and there was, like, I think 6 Bible teachers just sitting in a house, and they were discussing how to translate the word love. And they were thinking about it, and we were talking about it in Pidgin, and it just sparked so many good conversations and so many cool things that I got to enter into that they were working through, like, with you guys, with you, Andre, and with Jason, about how to translate and how to make this translation the best. It was really, really cool.
It was cool to just just to walk up and hear them talking about the Lord, or yeah, just that is so much of what their life focuses around. It's really cool to enter into. For me, I really enjoyed. There was one day that I just took my son Simeon out. He's 3, and he just has a lot of energy. He needed to get out in the village, and so I went over to one lady's house, Leonie, and all of the kids from the village. It seemed like we're at her house right there. And I just sat with her and hung out, and we laughed, and all the kids just played. Like, they wrestled and they played all kinds of different games, and it was just a really beautiful time to see how our family is in this ministry together.
Man, there was a couple nights that I just looked down and my legs were swarmed with mosquitoes. So I took a broom and I just had to, like, fight them all off. But honestly, that wasn't that bad. I think the hardest thing for our family was just transitioning. It's hard anytime you move to a new house, to a new place.
For young kids especially, it's just hard for kids to transition.
Since we've been in country, starting in May of last year, we've spent most of our time in town. And so in Papua New Guinea, there's a trade language called Tokpizin, and it's pretty much everywhere in the country now. And even though it's a language, it's still a trade language. In many ways, it's not what people speak in their heart. It's not what people speak in their home.
When we got there, they would tell us stories of how, before they'd heard the gospel, they'd heard about Jesus in the trade language. They'd heard lots of stories about him, but they were incredibly confused about the gospel and why he came and what really who Jesus was. So it was really cool. They told us that whenever they heard it in the trade language, it was just so clear. Like, everything
Not
was.
the trade language.
I'm sorry. Whenever they heard it in the talk place, their language, the tribal language, then everything was so clear. Like, they understood who God was, who Jesus was, why he came, their need for a savior.
It really encouraged us, like, taking the time to learn this language, to learn another tribal language, to present the gospel clearly. It is worth it, because it is, like, you can see it in their lives, how they are understanding the gospel clearly. So I think the biggest difference we saw in the lives of believers as compared to unbelievers is it's just a general, we saw in Iskis, in the lives of the believers, a general contentment and just a peace in their lives. And it was like on display from day one. One of the things I spent a lot of time doing is I would sit down with the believers and just hear their testimony. I'd ask them to share their whole testimony. And often the way people would start their testimony was, we were trying to figure out how to have a good life, whether it was through religion or through their beliefs, their
appeasing the spirits.
Yeah. That's where their focus was at. And then they hear the gospel and they hear what Jesus did in their life, and their whole perspective changed, where their focus, their goal in life isn't how do we have a good life, it's how do we follow Christ. And there's a neighboring talk place that hasn't heard the gospel, and it's another tribal language. They haven't heard the gospel, and before they were enemies, like sworn enemies, and now like their heart, the believers' hearts in Iskis, it's to reach this talk place, to reach these people. Cultural challenge that the Iskis people are going to face is just the school system here in Papua New Guinea. Like what is typical is after a certain grade, the kids will be sent away from school, away from their village, away from their family to a different school, away from their parents, and they're just exposed to a lot of the world. And another big shift that you guys kind of tipped us off to is just their shift in family, how they understand family. Where before they heard the gospel, their understanding of family was very different. Their understanding of marriage was very different. And now that they've heard the gospel and they've been given a biblical worldview of what marriage and family is, it's in contrast quite a bit to what was before.
Soon going to be entering into team formation and tribe allocation. So we're looking for coworkers, we're looking for a language group and tribe to move into. We're not sure where the Lord will have us go. We're going to be doing a lot of praying through that and seeking wisdom from others. So that's kind of our next step.
So like we've come to Papua New Guinea to do church planting, to do the work of learning a talk place, learning a tribal language, and presenting the gospel and doing a Bible translation. That's what we've come to Papua New Guinea to do.